called kitting. That kitting process used similar tables from the manufacturing arena, and in 2013 Microsoft has rewritten the entire process, devoted separate tables strictly for the assembly process itself, and has obviously renamed it from kitting to assemblies. Let's take a look at some assembled items and what Microsoft has added and how those are used. I'll go over to my items in the navigation pane, and I have a filtered view for these particular items, about a half a dozen or so. And let's take a look at the top item, the assembled item itself. I'll minimize this tab and open up the replenishment tab and look at a couple of features that are associated with assembled items. Under the replenishment system, in addition to the traditional purchase or production order, is now an assembly capability. And if an item is deemed as an assembly, the assembly field asks, is it assembled to order or is it assembled to stock? So assembled to stock states that I want to take these components, put them together, and then shelve or stock the assembled item, assembled to stock. Assembled to order states I don't want to build those until I actually get an order from my customer, and then based on the specific requirements for that customer, I will build them, and then that build will remove components and complete the assembled item for shipment to my customer. So let's take a look at some of the ways that we can view the information in assembly. And we'll start off by going to the bill of material associated with this item. So I'll go to my Navigate tab, and I'll come over to the Assembly Production group, and I'll look at the assembly and choose the Assembly Bill of Material. And now I'm given the structure for the end item. Now this end item is a cable that is sold to our customers, and the cable is made up of 1 meter or 100 centimeters of cable, and at each end of the cable are connectors. So for the end item, I have a standard unit of measurement of 1 meter of cable length and 2 connectors, and it also requires a resource of about a half an hour compute or complete the assembly of that particular cable. Let's take another view of this structure, and I'll use the structure icon. And here I have a tree view. I'll go ahead and open up the top item. Here again, looking at the bill of material, I have my end item, the cable, which is made up of, again, 100 centimeters of cable length and 2 connectors with Linda's time. If I open up the tree structure for the connectors, I see that these are made up of 3 different parts and 2 hours of Linda's time. The connectors themselves are established as assembly to stock, and the cable itself is associated as assemble to order. The connectors are always going to be the same, and since it takes 2 hours to produce these, I want to make sure that there are plenty available when we do get orders for the cabling itself. As I said, the standard piece of cable is 1 meter, but the customers vary on their requirements. So we don't want to build those to stock. We want to determine what the exact requirement is of the customer, and then we will cut the cable to the specific length and use the 2 connectors for that. So let's go ahead and create an assembly order for connectors. Since we have 0 in stock, we'll need to put some on the shelves in anticipation of orders for the cabling. So exit from here and come back to our main menu, and I'll go to assembly orders. And I'll create a new order. My order itself is for the connector, and as I start to type, NAV will filter. I'll tab off, and I'll enter how many do I want to build. And I'll say in this example, we want to consume 20. So immediately the bill of material for the assemble to stock item appears, and it shows that we have one each of these parts plus the time that Linda is required to build those. And since we've asked for 20, it's indicating that this is how many we're going to need in order to make the production order. I can always change the quantities that I need. So for example, if I wanted to produce only 14 at this particular time, I simply enter 14 as my quantity to assemble, and then it's simply a matter of posting. When I post this, it's going to remove the quantities of raw materials and create the end item, the actual connectors themselves. So let's go ahead and post that. So now I've gone ahead and created the 14, and it shows that I have a remaining quantity of 6. If we go look at the Navigate tab, look under Entries, we have several types of entries that could have been processed when the posting took place. Item ledger entries, for example, show the quantities of the raw materials being removed and the end items being made in addition. Also, we have capacity ledger entries for the time that was expended, the 14 at 2 hours each, for a total of 28 hours of Linda's time. And then we also show the posted assembly orders for this item. Expand that. And here we see for the 14 what our unit cost was and when these particular items were created. So let's go ahead now and look at an assembly to order, and I'll go ahead and post the remaining 6, which will complete the entire assembly order itself. So we've now removed all the raw materials and have in stock the connectors themselves. Let's go to our Roll Center, and we'll create a sales order. And this sales order is going to be for the cable itself with the 2 connectors. Put in our customer. We'll tab off that, and we'll come down to our lines. So this is, again, an item, and in this case, it's going to be for our cable. And we'll put in a quantity of 10. What the system has done at this point is it's actually created an assembly order for those 10 items. And if I drilled here into this column, quantity to assemble to order, I'll see that it has created this order. Here is our standard measurement of 1 meter per our connectors and our labor, and the total units of 10 quantities gives us this amount of raw material and consumption of labor. At this point in time, we also have the ability to be able to change this. So our standard cable length, again being 1 meter, can vary. In fact, you have the ability of being able to remove, add, or change any of the components that are in the bill of material itself. So let's say, for example, the customer wants 2 meters of cable. So we simply change that to 200 centimeters. Then we'll say OK, and we'll come back. Now our assembled order now shows the 2-meter lengths for each of the 10, but our price is based on the original value of 1 meter. We want to change that to reflect not just the cost of our 1 extra meter, but the sales price of that extra meter. So we'll go to the line, assemble to order, and we'll roll up our price. Say yes. And our price has now gone from $525 to $645, reflecting the change in that extra meter of length. I also can come here and roll up the cost to get a true cost of what this item is going to charge. Now, let's say the customer has made a change and they don't want 10, they actually want 12. So let's change that from 10 to 12, and we'll tab off. And what the system is now showing is we have an order for 12, but we only have the capability of producing 10. And this limitation of 10 is based on the fact that we only have the 20 connectors that we had just completed in our assembly order for the order to stock. And it's showing here that our availability is the 20. We're required for 24. I'm only able to make 10 of this one component. So it gives me the detail level as to the component that is short in order to be able to make this particular item. I'll go ahead and accept that order. Now, if I go ahead and print a pick ticket for these particular items, the 12, then I'm able to go over here to Actions, Pick Instructions, and I'll preview this. And this is the pick ticket for the assembly. It's showing that we want 12 of these, and it's showing the consumption by the actual pieces themselves. The 2 meters of cable, the 2 connectors, and the time based on the quantity of 12 for the total consumption for this. So this is an example of the pick instruction that can be generated for the assemble to order. Well, let's come back here just for a second and look at this availability again. It's showing that of the 12 that we ordered, we're only able to make 10, but I do have in inventory 2 of them. So perhaps I need to verify with the stock individual that that would meet the requirements of the customer. And if it does, then it's simply a matter of being able to come back to here and change my quantity to assemble to order to reflect the 10. So here, if I generate assemble to order only 10 of them, and now print a pick instruction, this is now showing a quantity to assemble of 10 and the components associated with that, but we're going to ship out the 12 due to the 2 that we actually have in stock. Now let's come back here and talk about the fact that we were short on the 2 in order to make those. If I go and look at my line item availability, I have several choices that are now in 2013, by event and by bill of material level, as well as the 3 that we're familiar with in prior versions. So if I click on the bill of material level, this is now showing, again, that tree structure of our quantities. And if I open up this tree structure, I can see all of the different pieces that I have available. And if I highlight the connector, which is where I was short in order to make the 12, I can look at that, and I've also got this availability in a graphic viewpoint. Now let's check this. My location is the blue location. And I'll preview this. So this graph is now giving me more insight into what actually I have as far as demand is concerned and what I have as far as availability by date. So here I see on my work date, the 23rd, my demand is just at the 20, but it spikes given other sales orders that I may have and shows that I'm unable to be able to make this until I reach the 26th. And here I show that I do have receipts scheduled to come in, which are going to allow me to make the additional 2 plus the other demand that I have on existing sales orders. So I can see by day my total inventory, what my requirements are, and how many I'm able to make. And I can see here that as of the 26th, my date of a receipt, I'll be able to make that particular charge. Now, one of the nice things as well in the assembly arena is that you have the ability to undo the assemble by order. So in the posting of these 10, I simply would post that. Just as the assemble to stock transactions took place, I would remove raw material components and end up with the end items, and I would then be able to ship those and invoice. But after the posting of that, the shipment, if you will, I do have the ability to be able to go to the posted shipment and do an undo. So for example, if the customer calls back and says, I made a mistake, I don't want those lengths to be 2 meters, I only want them to be 1.5 meters, I can simply go into my posted shipment, undo that shipment, then come back to my sales order, drill into my bill of material, change my quantity from 200 centimeters to 150 in this example. Maybe I want to change the time associated with that because I've now got to undo and then redo the cabling. Then I could change that time, come back, recalculate a sales price, recalculate the cost, and then go ahead and post those based on the new requirements of my customers. So let's go into one final area within the assembly. We'll come back to our item, the cable, and we'll go to the Navigate tab again. And here, rather than looking at the structure or the bill of material, I want to look at what is now referred to as cost shares. So cost shares allows you to view the total cost of an assembled item or a produced item by the different elements of the cost itself. So let's view the cost share for this particular item. And I'll expand this to cover the full screen. And I'll expand all tree levels to show the total bill of material. Here we have our components, the 1 meter, and then the connectors, 2 connectors, and the componentry of those 2 connectors. But as we move to the right, I now see all of my material costs. So my total material for the cable is $150. That's made up of $50 of the actual meter of cable itself and $100 for the materials in the connector. and the $100 of that connector is made up of 20 of the housing, $70 for the relay, and $10 for the outer rings. There's also capacity costs, Linda's costing. So it took her the 2 hours per connector for a total of 4 hours at $10 an hour is $40, plus the half hour to put the connectors to the cable is another $5. So that 40 plus the 5 gives me a total cost of labor at $45. I happen to have manufacturing overhead costs associated with these particular parts, and those round up to $24.40. I've got capacity for my overheads, or overhead capacity, I should say, and those are made up of these costs. And then if I had any scrap associated with this, giving me a total cost of what my connectors are valued. So it gives me a much easier way to be able to view the costing structure for this particular item, or any items within NAV. Perhaps looking at the cost of the connectors, we might determine that it would be better to do a buy as opposed to a make, giving you more insight. And of course, NAV 2013 has far more graphic capabilities associated with it. If we go look at our connector, for example, and we look at the BOM share distribution, I've got a couple of choices here. I can look at my levels from the bill of material or from the BOM leaves. Let's take a look at both. I'm going to look at my BOM level here, and I want to include all of the details for this connector, the make-to-stock item. I'll preview that. And here I have a graphic representation of the details of the connector. These are the different parts and Linda's time associated with that, as well as that capacity overhead that I've indicated for Linda's time. So I'm looking at that as a bar chart. I see that this one particular item is $35, whereas the other items are $10 and $5 respectively. I can break this down by material versus labor and overhead, or I can look at this by direct and indirect cost associated with the production, as well as a listing of the items themselves. Let's look at the other view. Here we'll look at the last graph, and this time we'll look at the bill of material leaves associated with that. Again, we'll look at the detail, and we'll preview that. Now we're looking at, again, this item is running at 35. Here's our other items, and again, the different graphs by material and by indirect labor or direct labor. So as you see within assemblies, there is a great deal of latitude based on how you want to stock inventory and maintain inventory, whether you want to have assembled items build a stock ready for usage or shipment, as well as the ability to create the assembly order on the fly using the sales order itself, which automatically creates the assembled order transactions. You've seen the robust picking report that's available to that, the ability to see all of the componentry required or lack of components requirements for associating a customer's requirements for the end item. And by using graphs, you have the ability to look at availability, when you can promise that date for a customer, as well as new ways to view the cost structure, whether it be in the tree structure with the different elements, material, labor, scrap, overhead, or in graphic representation as we see here. So there's quite a bit that Microsoft has done in assemblies to give you far more analysis and insight into your inventory. Suzanne, I think that's it that we wanted to show for assemblies.
Great, thanks, Bruce. I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. I don't think I have any questions right now, but if you do, please use the raise your hand feature or go ahead and type it in the questions pane of the GoToWebinar console. We do appreciate everyone setting aside a few minutes of your busy day for this webinar. We hope you consider it time well spent. To help us continue to offer value, we'd like to ask that you take a few minutes more to give us your feedback and also tell us what topics you would like covered in future Lunch and Learn webinars. Simply email your comments to info@archerpoint.com. Again, that's info@archerpoint.com. And we don't have any questions at this time, so pretty straightforward. Thanks so much, Bruce. We appreciate the demonstration today.
My pleasure.
This concludes today's session. Have a great day, everyone.